welcome to our first ever Gabra Zebra series. Today I am joined by a very special guest, Mr. Clement Tan.
Hi everybody.
So the idea is today we are going to both talk about structured response question 6. So hopefully today's online lesson will be useful for everyone who's currently tuning in.
Okay, so just a very short run through of what is SRQ question 6. SRQ itself basically is section B of the social studies exam paper. It is a compulsory question obviously for all candidates that's taking the paper. And both of these questions 6 and 7 together is worth 15 marks in total, which is about 30% of the paper. Okay, there are 3 written extracts, extract 1, 2 and 3. Extract 1 is mainly for question 6, extract 2 and 3 is mainly for question 7.
Okay, so for today's focus, we are actually going to focus on SRQ question 6. So why do we even have SRQ in the first place? So basically, SRQ was created to allow students to demonstrate an understanding of societal issues and also to allow students to be able to analyze societal issues through different perspectives. So the idea is that through your SRQ answers, you should be able to construct reasoned arguments and make informed judgment and recommendations.
The 3 types of questions that generally will be asked is questions about a particular strategy that we can use to resolve a particular social issues, a reason why these issues actually occur, or the impacts of these issues. So these are generally the 3 types of questions, but recently we are seeing more and more questions that it's either a mixture of all 3, or they generally don't ask in a way where it's very clear what are they asking for. So that is something that students need to take note of.
Yeah, so for example, last year's O-level was asking for ways, right? What ways can you help the lower income group? And then for 2 years ago, they actually asked for what kind of messages would you want to give to Singaporeans in order to encourage recycling, right? Or something like that. Yeah, so I realized that now the questions are not very straightforward. The idea is you just want to see how you establish your point and how you actually argue out your point and the examples. Okay, so when it comes to talking about strategy, obviously your strategy has to be feasible and logical. So the pill structure is actually the structure that we will ask you to use when it comes to answering SRQ question 6. So for today's online lesson, we are going to focus on strategy question, not so much because it's the commonly tested, but because it's one of the questions that students tend to struggle a little bit more. Okay, so step 1, the first thing that you are supposed to do when it comes to SRQ question 6 is always read the extract. Of course, granted, you're not supposed to lift anything from the extract to put in your answer, but the idea is just to read the extract and get an understanding of what is the scope of the question or what do they want you to keep in mind when you're answering it. Okay, so this is the extract that we're going to use for today. Please pause the video to read further. Step 2, we will need you to read the question. So this is the question that we have. In your opinion, how can the number of vehicles in Singapore be reduced? Explain your answer using 2 strategies. Step 3, before you answer straight, what you need to do is to brainstorm on your answer. A lot of students always say that, oh, I don't really know what to say, or my mind is blank. So a lot of students actually share that sometimes it's not so much about writing, but more towards thinking of what to write. So what you need to do is to ask yourself these questions. Look at the issue. What is the core issue? What is the main problem here? And ask yourself, is something already done to tackle this issue? Is it enough? If something is already being done, why aren't the current measures working out?
Something to add as well, especially for the second point about is something already done to tackle this issue, it's good to identify certain problems that the current measures have, and when you actually use this example as part of an SRQ answer, you can make recommendations on how to actually improve on the current measures, and by doing so, I think your answer will be a lot more complete.
Okay, so for example, based on the issue that we have just shown you just now, the core issue here is that number of cars are not going down as people need their own mode of transportation. So Mr. Tan, why do you think people are still buying a lot of cars?
I don't have a car myself, but my parents have a car. They lend me quite often. let me use it quite often. So I think especially for a person which have for a family, especially if you have younger children, a car is really a much faster and much more convenient way to travel around compared to a bus. Especially if I'm going to drag my kid up the bus and off the bus, it's very, very troublesome. So really it's about convenience. I think that's the main idea here.
And for me also, increasingly I find myself using Grab or Gojek quite often. I guess one is because whenever you travel on weekend, I don't know whether you realize the public transport takes forever. Like the MRT is either very crowded or it takes very long to come. So when it finally comes, then it gets crowded again. So as a result, I always rather just spend a little bit more on Grab to go to whatever that I want to go during the weekend. So if you think about it, these are the potential reasons why people are still buying cars and why the number of cars are not going down. So one thing that you always need to do is read the question, identify the core issue, and just ask yourself, okay, logically, in your own perspective, why are the number of cars not going down? Why are people still buying a lot of cars?
Just one thing to add as well, for when you talk about these reasons, I think you can think about it from a more personal perspective. I think it's fine to do that as well. You don't need to always consider like, oh, on a broader scale and whatsoever. I think from personal perspective, it gives you a lot of this, because you experience it, right? So you know a lot of what are these problems, as well as what in this case the cars. Why would you choose to even Grab compared to taking a public transport? I think you know it yourself.
Yeah, usually for SRQ, they'll try to ask things or topics that you are familiar with, something that you can relate to.
And SRQ question 6 also, based on the historical kind of questions that they ask, it's always Singapore based, which means that you do have a good experience, that you will experience some of these issues on a day-to-day basis. So I don't think it should be something that is very unfamiliar for you.
It's too unfamiliar. Correct. So for example, like what you're talking about is much more faster and more convenient to use your own cars, or even just to maybe get into someone else's car to Grab or Gojek.
You can call a friend to fetch you or something. Yes.
Yeah. So if let's say it's faster and more convenient to own your own cars, then I guess my strategy should focus on why people are not getting their own cars, which is because it's more faster and more convenient. So I need to focus on the core issue. Then my alternative solution should offer convenience and efficiency so as to reduce the number of cars. So your strategy should kind of nip the problem in the bud.
Yeah, so we are really looking at how do I shift, let's say, a certain portion of people that is already taking a car to perhaps maybe using public transport, right? So it's to how to change their mindset and offer a better solution.
Okay, so we have identified that the number of cars are not going down as people need their own mode of transportation. Why? Because if you think about it, it's more faster and more convenient to use our own cars. So our solution must focus on the fact that people are more drawn towards using their own cars because of efficiency and convenience. So one point that I would probably suggest is to improve the quality of public transport. So for example, maybe public transport can be improved by shortening waiting times, by increasing the frequency of buses or trains. So always make sure that your example is very tangible, so that if let's say someone were to read your example or your strategy, they can actually carry out in real life. So essentially you're telling them exactly your strategy and how this strategy can be implemented in their real life. So if you want to say that, okay, I want to improve quality of public transport, you must say improve how exactly. So how exactly? Maybe shorten waiting times. How do you shorten waiting times? I increase the number of buses or trains that's coming. So more buses means it's more accessible to go to certain places. So if let's say quality of public transport is improved, there's more buses, more trains, shorter waiting time, then people will realize that it's better to take public transport. Like the issue of convenience and efficiency is actually met through the public transport. Then people would then be more willing to take the public transport than to purchase a car on their own. This would then significantly reduce the number of cars on the road.
Sorry, I just want to interject. Perhaps I would not write the word significantly here because really we're looking at just a group of people shifting away from usage of cars to public transport. But I think the shift would be significant in this case, but it's not that many.
Yeah.
Maybe just another example. Maybe when it comes about quality of public transport, other than the fact that we're looking at shortening waiting times through the increasing frequency, maybe we can also add maybe more stops along the way. That's what the government is actually trying to do as well, adding more MRT stations. So the distance or the time taken from a person at home to go to let's say public transport node, let's say in for example the MRT station, is actually much shorter, and from there they can go to many other places. So that is also another example we can talk about.
Okay, so the pill structure can also be done for reasons and impact questions. So realize, even if let's say the SRQ question 6, they ask you something that is rather unique, like waste or messages, you realize that the pill structure is can pretty much be used for a lot of different kinds of questions. I guess that's why your English teacher pushed for pill structure a lot. So for example, if let's say the SRQ question is asking for reasons, Mr. Tan will be sharing how you can use the pill structure for reasons questions.
So the first thing, of course, for the P, you want to actually examine why is this issue actually happening. So that will be part of the point that you want to elaborate maybe at the start of your answer. Okay, followed by evidence, which is about some of things that you have read before, or certain reasons why you would suggest that, hey, why is this issue happening? Yeah, so these are the things that you probably read in your different like articles that your teachers share with you, or maybe from your books, or really from your general knowledge that, hey, I know this is happening due to these reasons, and that will form your evidence. Of course, when we talk about explanation, okay, we try to link it back to the point about the issue itself, right? So we say, oh, these things, after you give, let's say, the reasons, the evidence itself, okay, then you say, okay, when these things happen, this will lead to, how does it lead to this particular issue? So this will be addressed in explanation and the link portion of your answer.
So similarly, if let's say the SRQ question is asking for impact, then for your point, that is where you need to answer the question directly. What is the impact that you want to talk about? So after you have established the impact that you want to talk about, then you need to back it up with evidence, because essentially you're making a claim. When you make a claim, you need to back it up with facts, with data. So information or facts you read from the news, from textbook, if let's say you're really banking out, the textbook has a lot of examples that you can actually use, even class discussions, which is why your SS teachers will always bring in class discussion on whatever is currently happening in Singapore or around the world. So whatever that you see around you, whatever that you read in class or in school, to be honest, sometimes school events, you can actually use it as evidence or examples for your SRQ as well. So once you have made your claim, you have backed it up with evidences, facts to support your claim, this is where you will need to elaborate. For your elaboration and your link, this is where you need to talk about why this impact is happening, link back to the examples that you have talked about. So what I always like to say to students is that when you're writing your SRQ question 6, you can just imagine that you're engaging in some sort of a nerdy debate with a friend about an issue, and you want to win this debate, right? You want to win this argument. So how do you make sure that you win an argument with your friend? You bring forward your strongest examples. You make sure that your explanation really shows how your example proves that your point is correct. So always, it works for me. You just visually imagine arguing with someone or fighting with someone, having a nerdy discussion, and you want to win it. So how do you make sure that your argument is the strongest? Sorry, I fight with people a lot.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, anyway, I agree with what Ms. Rose actually just mentioned about the whole argument kind of analogy. I think also for my classes, I do tell them that the closest subject that is very similar to SS is perhaps law, okay, whereby there is no right or wrong answer. It's only how you argue and how you substantiate your points. So I think also, just to come back again to SRQ question number 6, I think let's all be very clear that really any of the points that you want to make, as long as substantiated by evidence, you link it back to the issue, you should be scoring quite well. So the next question that perhaps you have to ask us is, how do I do well for this question? Just a few tips I think that we have actually advised some of the students. Number one is really about time management. I think that is the biggest issue that a lot of the students are facing. As you all know, the SS paper is really not too long. It's perhaps every mark you need to spend about 2 minutes only to complete. So for 2 strategies for a 7-mark question, you probably only need to spend 40 minutes to complete it, which is actually very, very short for 2 strategies. So if you really do not have the time to do 2 strategies, please complete 1 very, very good strategy. I think quality will give you a good mark. Rather than you do 2 not very good strategies, you may not even get the same mark as you do 1 very good one. Okay, so quality is always, I think, is always better.
Yeah, I agree, because like what I always say in class, I guess during lessons, we teachers will just teach you whatever methods that you need to know. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's sitting for the paper. You know yourself the best. This is where you need to strategize and pick your own battles. If you feel like you're really running out of time and you just want to write 1 paragraph, or you only have time for 1 paragraph, just write 1 very good one. Make sure all your pill structure is there, and then you can just move on to the next question. Because having an answer for all questions is better than having no answer at all for a question.
Agreed. Maybe just one more thing also, when we consider pill itself, for SRQ question states itself, try to think of different skills. Let's say from an individual, what can be done? What are the things that would affect me? What are the impacts to the individual? And moving upwards, what's the impact to the community? What are some strategies the community can do? What are some reasons that from the community itself that may cause certain issues to happen? And last but not least, the largest scale we look at is really the national scale, where what are some policies that have taken place that really help to resolve certain issues? What are some of the reasons people are experiencing some of these problems that we face? Is it a policy issue? Is it something the government could do? Okay, and last but not least, what is the impact of some of these issues that on the national scale that is being carried out? Okay, so I think it's good to think of it from a smaller scale to a larger scale, maybe, so that your answers are a lot more flexible, just in case you cannot remember some of the answers.
Okay, so we hope that this online lesson has been somewhat helpful if you are panicking and Gabra zebraing for your SRQ question 6. But most importantly, like what I always say in the description of the videos, if you have further questions, please check in with your SS teachers, because they would probably have more specific examples to your more specific question. So that's all for today's lesson. Thank you for tuning in. Bye!
Bye! Don't be a Gabra zebra.